This is a place that has made its mark on history. Towering forests crowd the river, just as they did when America was born. These woods and waters were the home of Francis Marion, South Carolina's great hero of the American Revolution. Over 225 years ago, he used these tangled swamp woods and rivers to bedevil the British redcoats and help birth a new nation. Today, this river is a national treasure, and for those who know its secrets, it's a pathway to adventure. Hey, I'm Eddie Nickens, and today I've got one foot in the past and one foot in the present. Or maybe you ought to make that a paddle. I'm here on South Carolina's Revolutionary Rivers Trail. My guide today for our history tour is Holly Beaumier. I think I see her right now. Hey there, Holly.
Eddie, good to see you.
Oh, and what a great day. It just feels like history happened here.
And it did. It actually did. You know, we're standing in the shadow of the statue of Francis Marion. He helped to win the American Revolutionary War.
Yeah, so this is where he used to disappear. I think it's a great place for us to disappear for a day.
All right.
I don't ever need a reason to put a paddle in a river, but I love the fact that we're sort of following in the footsteps of a historic figure.
I know. It's really a beautiful river, and it's got an awesome story. Francis Marion, they called him the Swamp Fox because, you know, he was one of the first guerrilla warfare fighters. He didn't use any of those traditional British techniques.
You can just imagine how the Swamp Fox just took advantage of all of this territory.
Yeah, I'm sure he drove the British crazy trying to find him.
Holly, this giant cypress tree is hollow all the way to the crown. It's a cave in here.
I know, isn't it great? And you know, they actually served as storage areas during the American Revolution. The guys would hide their munitions inside the hollows of cypress trees.
And Holly, you are right. This river tells an amazing story.
You know, this is my absolute most favorite place in the whole world, and I'm glad you're able to share it with me.
Thank you for joining me today as I talk about the South Carolina Revolutionary Rivers Trail. I am Jade Perkins with the Florence Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I'm also a member of Forever Friends of the Revolutionary Rivers. The video that you just watched was created by South Carolina Parks, Recreation, and Tourism and provides a great introduction into the South Carolina Revolutionary Rivers Trail.
The trail follows the Lynch's Scenic River from Lynch's River County Park to the confluence with the Petey River and an upstream section of the Great Petey River to just below the confluence with the Lynches.
The 66-mile trail offers paddlers a unique experience of floating through cypress and tupelo-laden swamplands that was once traversed by patriots engaged in guerrilla warfare against the Loyalists. The trail also features a series of short excursions and an overnight camping experience. The trail is officially recognized as a National Recreation Trail by the National Park Service. It was with the help of Bill Lane at the National Park Service that we were able to begin the process of getting the trail recognized, and it became official in 2017. The trail is perfect for paddlers of all skill level, from beginner to experienced. If you're new to kayaking, there are shorter excursions, and they range from about 2 to 4 hours with a guide. But of course, if you're looking for a really tough paddle, you could try the full 66-mile trail. Before I get into any more detail about the logistics of paddling the trail itself, I first want to tell you what makes the Lynch's Scenic River just so revolutionary. The following is a recording of the Francis Marion Trail Commission sites in the Petey region. First, we'll hear the story of Snow's Island.
Snow's Island, Den of the Fox. The drama of history is painted on a canvas of such magnitude that it takes the passing of time to provide a perspective that leads to appreciation of its significance. The fierce passions of individuals fighting for a cause, their sacrifices, their pain and suffering are often dimmed over the years, but their spirit remains. Snow's Island is an example of such a place, a historical and cultural landscape preserved amidst an important ecological resource. Snow's Island represents the focal point for any important part of not only the PD's history, but also that of South Carolina and the nation. One man, General Francis Marion, had a fierce determination to defend his country, combined with an intimate understanding of the landscape and its benefits. He and his men capitalized on his knowledge to turn the landscape itself into an enduring weapon that supported their efforts. From their base on Snow's Island, they ambushed the British and rescued American soldiers. Until the end of the conflict, Francis Marion remained the elusive swamp fox. Even today, Snow's Island is an imposing reality. It is a huge area of high swamp bordered on the west by Clark's Creek, on the north by the Lynches River, and on the east by the Great Petey River, and on the south by Muddy Creek and Snow Lake. The reality is that what most people today consider Snow's Island extends much further to the west across other waterways and approaches Johnsonville. Most of the island is forested, and there are several lakes on the island, including Scott Lake and Johnson Lake, with Snow Lake forming part of the southern border. In wet weather, several streams cross the landmass and 2 creeks carry the water from the Lynches River down to Muddy Creek, Snow Lake, which in turn conveys the water to the Great Petey. The Lynches River has been blocked by debris for many years when it gets to within a mile or two of the Great Petey, and the Great Petey frequently backflows into the channel of the Lynches. Much of the area is forested, and there are even some huge old-growth cypress trees in the swamps along with Lynches and the other waterways. It is believed that in Marion's day, the land was largely covered with trees, and that a horseman could travel at speed along the forest floor because the tree canopy allowed for little sunlight, and therefore vegetation low to the ground was sparse. There were, of course, bogs, swamps, and marshes surrounding the island, but there was much relatively higher ground, and quite a bit of the island itself was generally fairly dry. The famous camp on the island was attacked and destroyed by British Colonel Doyle, while it was defended by a very small number of militia and a few wounded and sick who were recuperating at the camp. The Swamp Fox was busy fighting the British and Colonel Watson at Sandpit Bridge outside of Georgetown. A traitor named Moskelly led the British force to the camp. Because of the natural barriers of water and swamp surrounding the island, prevailing wisdom is that Marion, had he been in camp with even a moderate-sized force, could easily have stopped Doyle from crossing Clark's Creek and might well have fought him from defensive positions even further west. Snow's Island not only provides very difficult terrains for an invader to cross, it also provides for escape, particularly if an enemy is approaching from the west. A large campsite at Dunham's Bluff, just across the Great Petey River from Snow's Island, could have provided a corridor for escape. This large campsite and redoubt on the east side of the Great Petey River were discovered and archaeologically investigated by the Francis Marion Trail Commission in 2007. Although the Snow's Island campsite itself has never been identified, even after 3 archaeological investigations, a number of small military sites have been located. There is some indication that the camp may not have been in the area on which the previous archaeological efforts have focused, but further west and within a mile or two of the Great Petey River, or possibly north of the Lynches. Anecdotes from the 1970s and from hunters' experiences in the 1950s and 60s could point to the actual site of the camp, but the potential area to explore is huge. The camp on Snow's Island served not just as a military base, but as a symbol of the toughness, resourcefulness, survival skills, and determination of the men who dared to challenge the greatest military power in the world at that time. It represented a type of warfare for which the British were ill prepared, and to which they had great difficulty adapting. There's a legend that a British officer was escorted to the camp to effect a prison exchange and was invited to dinner by Marion himself. The fare was roasted sweet potatoes and creek water. After returning to the British camp, this officer supposedly resigned his commission in the British Army with the explanation that he now believed that the British could not defeat the men who could withstand such hardships as he had witnessed and still fight with skill and ferocity. Whether truth or legend, this story predicted the outcome, and the camp on Snow's Island was its symbol. History's whisper is always there, calling to those who are prepared to hear it. Whether it is the pounding of the hoofbeats on the plains or the silent swish of leaves in a forest as men move stealthily through the trees on a mission, a new generation deserves to appreciate the cultural landscape that surrounds it. It needs the lessons of the past to inform the present. They need the strength that comes from knowing that another generation once overcame turbulent times and overwhelming odds.
Another story to share with you today highlights General Francis Marion's legacy and explains why it's so important.
Why Marion's story is worth the telling. The things that make General Francis Marion's story exceptional are not the military tactics employed, the victories, or the pivotal role played by a tiny group of fighters and patriots who affected the course of world history. The general's character and the way he interacted with the people who played a part of his life are the things that elevate this far above a military adventure. Marion and a number of others can serve as role models for children and young people today, every bit as relevant now and in the future as 230 years ago. Marion's saga is a great morality play. He is the quintessential underdog, sickly as a small child, small in stature, partially crippled, and modestly educated. He possessed dark, piercing eyes and sharp features considered unhandsome by the standards of his day. The Swamp Fox was a good man in an extremely brutal situation, fighting determined, far more powerful, and frequently evil adversaries. Marion prevails, not always by brute strength, but by intellect, high moral principles, a sense of compassion for his troops and his enemy, physical toughness, incredible bravery, sheer cuss determination, and a genius for things military. He is not without flaws, but he is a magnificent role model. Marion fought with courage and distinction in the third of the Indian Wars against the Cherokee about 1760, personally leading an almost suicidal charge that cracked the Cherokee defenses at Echo Pass. Early in the Revolutionary War, at the Battle of Sullivan's Island, Marion figured prominently in the legendary defeat of British warships. Later in the Revolution, just before the devastating American loss at the Battle of Camden, Marion was asked to take over command at the Williamsburg Militia in the Pee Dee area of South Carolina. This militia was destined to become one of the most effective fighting units in American military history. George Washington's war in the North was stalemated. The British elected to change strategy and win the war in the Southern Theater, an area that contained the economic resources of greatest importance to the British. A compelling argument can be made that the war for American independence was lost by the British in the South. However, in the South, the Americans themselves lost 3 armies in succession, one at Savannah, a second at Charleston, and a third at Camden. For a brief period after the loss of General Gates' army at Camden, a small cadre of fighters under Francis Marion was virtually all that kept the South from falling to the British. Marion's militia often rode huge distances, attacked without warning, frequently at night, and melded into the swamp or forest. British lines of communication were disrupted. The British and Tories could not consolidate their hold on South Carolina. Had the British been able to consolidate their hold, international law of the day would have allowed them to keep the territory they held at the time of the armistice. British victory in the South, specifically South Carolina, would have likely cost America the war. Our history and that of the world would have been vastly altered. A description of Marion and his men recorded when Marion and a few militiamen visited General Gates' camp at Camden. Quote, Colonel Marion, a gentleman of South Carolina, had been with the army but a few days, attended by a very few followers. Their number did not exceed 20 men and boys, some white, some black, and all mounted, but most of them miserably equipped. Their appearance was in fact so burlesque that it was with much difficulty the diversion, the regular soldiery, was restrained by the officers, and the general himself was glad of an opportunity of detaching Colonel Marion, at his own instance, towards the interior of South Carolina, with orders to watch the motions of the enemy and furnish intelligence. A few days later, Marion left the camp. General Gates' army was destroyed by the British. Meanwhile, Marion had taken command of the Williamsburg Militia. The Williamsburg Militia was a tiny band of poorly equipped, wretchedly clothed, underfed, and unpaid citizen soldiers. There was rarely enough ammunition. They did have fast horses, knowledge of the swamps, forests, and rivers, excellent riflemen, and the ability to live off the land, and first-rate scouts and spies. Now they also had a little leader with great courage and a penchant for guerrilla warfare. The militia was composed of small farmers, trappers and hunters, aristocrats, tradesmen, slaves, freemen, clergy, Catawba Indians, whites, blacks, triracials and biracials, French Huguenots, scouts, Irish, English, Germans, and others, often assisted by female spies and the wives, mothers, and sweethearts of the fighters. Marion was careful not to be reckless with the lives of his men. He rarely engaged with the enemy unless he believed his militia could win with relatively light casualties. Quote, he waged war not for the glory for himself, but in the manner that was the safest for us. According to one militiaman, Marion's men loved him for this. The little general seemed to have an innate understanding of the importance of winning the hearts and minds of the populace. Some around him wanted him to take part in plundering of the farms of his enemies, but he refused. He opposed those who would abuse the Tories, opposed confiscation of Tory property, knowing that these actions would make reconciliation after the war much more difficult. When the war was over, Marion said, quote, God has given us the victory. Let us show our gratitude to heaven, which we shall not do by cruelty to men. This may have been Marion's greatest moment, although it is not always remembered. The Swamp Fox received much criticism for this stand. Many wanted vengeance and retribution. A bloodbath like that in the aftermath of the French Revolution could have occurred. Marion stood his ground, and his influence helped prevent such a tragedy. He believed that the people should establish a just civil government based on law. Others came to see the wisdom of Marion's point of view. The establishment of peace after the war is perhaps Marion's greatest achievement. A partially crippled, modestly educated, middle-aged little man with a hooked nose and fierce eyes leading an impoverished and eclectic band of citizen soldiers played a pivotal role in the defeat of the most powerful military in the world at that time. The Swamp Fox frequently demonstrated compassion for his enemy, both soldiers and civilians. Honesty, honor in his dealings, selflessness, and magnanimity for victory. He understood the importance of winning the loyalty of the people, whereas many of his adversaries seemed not to grasp this concept. Marion was a major influence for the reconciliation rather than retribution after the war, even though his home and material possessions had been largely destroyed by the fighting. The greatest benefit of exploring the history of Francis Marion and his brigade is that it gives us understanding of the great lessons of the past and makes these lessons available to our generation and generations to come. He was God's own man and one of the greatest leaders a young nation could ever hope to have.
Now that you understand the importance of General Francis Marion to the Revolutionary War and how the Lynches played a part in that history, let me tell you how you can access this great piece of history in Florence County. If you're new to paddling, there are local outfitters that have everything that you need to get started, even if you're a beginner. We're going to hear from two people today that can help get you ready to paddle through history. First up, at Lynches River County Park, we're going to go over Kayaking 101.
Hey guys, my name is Scott McGilvery out here at Lynches River County Park. I'm a park ranger out here, and today we're going to talk about how to get on the river and talk about kayaking, basically Kayaking 101. So basic steps, we're going to just talk about how we out here at Lynches River County Park we go about renting a kayak. So as of right now, there's easy ways to get a hold of us. You're able to call us at the Environmental Discovery Center. You're even able to contact one of the park rangers if you see us out and about. If you just stop us, we'll go through the process. One is you'll have to sign a waiver to be able to rent a kayak. You must be 18 years old to rent a boat, or you have to have at least one person in the boat with you that's 18. We do offer multiple options of kayaking. We have kayaks, we have two-man canoes, we also have tandem kayaks. And the difference between a tandem kayak and a kayak is a tandem kayak has two seats instead of one. But it is actually, to me personally, it's the harder of the two to do. The other thing we'll go through is after you sign the waiver and after you pay your deposit and you pay for your boats and all, we'll get you down here to the canoe launch and we'll put you in. Once we put you in, you will get a phone number for the Environmental Discovery Center or the park ranger cell phone number, and we will be the ones that will actually come and pick you up and we'll bring you back to your vehicle, so you would not have to go anywhere else. It's a one-stop shop here. So guys, our stretch of the river, what we call our stretch of the river is about 5 river miles. From the 5 river miles, about 45 minutes worth of the 1.5 hour to 2 hour trip is extremely difficult, and a lot of that can be is due to continuous flooding for pushing trees around. Some of that is due to hurricanes we've had in the past, even though we have tried to do our best to do cleanup, but there's only so much we can do. So if you are a beginner paddle, you can do it. However, you need to be cautious. It's always better to go with somebody that's more experienced, at least on the more tougher stretch. Once you get through about the 45-minute part, the second leg of the trip is usually fairly easy. It's wide open. The river gets a lot more wider. But this stretch, the first 45 minutes, is very tight, very narrow. So that's what makes it more difficult, and with down trees and logs, it'll be a little bit tougher to see. So we do recommend that if you have more experienced kayakers, for them to come with you, to go with you at least on this first part of the trip. We do offer a guided trip. For more information about, please look at our Facebook page at Winches River County Park. We do highly recommend, if you're beginners, to get guided trips. It's just safer if you do this, just because we do have more experience on the river, and we can just guide you through it a lot easier and safer. Just in case if something goes wrong, we will be there to help you, help any situation. All right, guys, other thing we need to talk about is just a little bit of river safety for here for Winches River County Park. What I do recommend is, from our trip from here at the canoe launch all the way down to 52 Landing, it's usually anywhere from an hour and a half to a 2-hour trip. So you need to be prepared for that length of time. Water, food, anything like that would just get you through the trip. And you also need to be very cautious about the weather, especially here in South Carolina. We can experience high humidity. We can also experience heat index that can get up to 100 degrees. So just put all that in account, and also for the summer storm weather, that you're not getting yourself caught in a bad situation where a storm might pop up in nowhere and you're caught on the river. Other thing is just making sure you have all your gear that's appropriate, your life jacket on that's correct, your paddles and stuff like that. One good thing to always have is some people do recommend closed-toe shoes. I especially recommend, maybe if it's not closed-toed, that actually have a strap on it. There's sandals that have straps around the ankle, just to make sure your feet don't, your shoes don't come off. Really, sunscreen if you do it during the summer months. If you do it during the colder months, long sleeves, carry a blanket just in case if you fall in the water for hypothermia, other situations like that. It really just depends on, your gear depends on the environment that you're going to be in.
And if you haven't been to Winches River County Park, be sure to check out the canopy bridge that goes along the treetops. There's also the splash pad in the summer months, and beautiful trails and boardwalk for hiking. Another outfitter that would love to get your family out on the river is Barry Frick, owner of River Rats in Scranton. They also offer guided excursions for all levels of paddlers. For the beginner paddler, they offer short, easy paddles, but if you're looking for a more strenuous paddle, he and his crew will be happy to take you on a 4 or 5 hour trip. The longer paddle truly takes you into some of the most scenic, untouched areas of Florence County. Barry is going to tell us exactly what it means to be a river rat, about some of his excursions, discuss the importance of planning a paddle around river level, and why he's an advocate for getting kids out on the river.
A river rat is somebody that spent his entire life on the river. I was paddling my own boat before I was 9 years old, and we put in it at a 2 mile point above us and paddle down here and fish on our way down. And I just been here all my life. At River Rats, we take people upstream normally for a 5 mile trip. Takes them 2.5 hours usually to come back down. We go out at 4 times a day, 9, 11, 1, and 2. We also have a long trip that starts at Highway 52. We've been in business for 14 years now, and we just try to get people out here and hopefully get a lot of new paddlers. This year has been an unusual year. The river has been higher than normal, only down to about 4 foot at one period for 4 days. Normally we run in with a 2 to 4 foot river, and we're able to, it makes it a lot easier, a lot better for first timers. We do recommend that either you use a guide, have someone that's really knowledgeable for paddling at the levels of the river that we've had this year, because it is faster and you get in trouble quicker. And should you get in trouble, it's just harder to get things straightened back out. The longer excursion is better with a little bit 4 to 5 foot river level. You need a little bit more experience. You need to understand that you're going to be sitting in that seat for about 5 hours in a kayak. That can be a long time. But anyway, there's often, when the river levels are down in the lower levels, you have plenty of sandbars to stop along the way. But even without the sandbars, there's places you can stop, stretch, rest, and enjoy yourself. This is just the best thing that ever could happen to a kid. They get out here, they find things, it's just amazing what all's laying around, flying around in the trees. Get them out and get them interested in doing that. It's much better than sitting there with a video game all day. If you want to get them interested in this and get them paddling, it's just a breeze to them. A kid that's 8 to 15 years old, you don't need to give them paddle instruction. Give them the paddle, they fear nothing. They gonna get out there and they gonna have a good time, and they not gonna be the ones that you have to get out of the bush. They gonna fight it out.
Barry Frick has been an advocate for the river all of his life, like you heard, and he chairs the Friends of the Revolutionary Rivers group. He was instrumental in building the first platform campsite that we're going to talk about next. If you're looking for a unique, completely rustic way to experience nature and history, be sure to check out the Friends of the Revolutionary Rivers platform campsite. Let's take a look.
Imagine sleeping in the middle of the swamp where General Francis Marion and his troops are said to have roamed during the Revolutionary War. Here's your chance to experience nature and history. Situated off of the bank of the Lynch's Scenic River is the Forever Platform Campsite that protects you from the elements while still having a rustic camping experience. A completely screened-in structure, the platform protects from weather and also allows for campers to hang hammocks. The platform provides shelter, a primitive bathroom, a fire pit, and a large deck for admiring the scenery.
The platform can be booked for $25 a night by visiting forever.us.
I try to come down at least every couple of weeks, check on it. Come down after someone uses it and make sure that they left it as it should be. It's a great place to camp with minimal supplies, a sleeping bag, air mattress, and no tents needed. You're not going to get wet. It's good shelter. Just a great place for camping. Fishing is allowed. It's good fishing down here on these banks. These banks you can get up and down the bank for probably a quarter of a mile here with good fishing all along the way. Another great thing about this location is a great swimming hole. A little deeper over on this side, but you get about 10 foot out there and it starts tapering up to a shallow sandbar on the other side. Just a great place to get a good swim in, or you bath if you'd like. Just a great swimming hole.
This is the first Friends of the Revolutionary Rivers platform built along the Lynch's River and the Revolutionary Rivers. The plan is to build a campsite every 10 miles along the trail. So keep your eye out for more rustic camping opportunities along the Revolutionary Rivers. Forever has also published a waterproof map of the entire South Carolina Revolutionary Rivers Trail. The map is full of helpful information that can be used to plan your paddle, like identifying all of the landings along the 66-mile trail. It also identifies tips that you might need for certain areas of the paddle, highlights the wildlife, flora, and fauna that you might see along the way, safety tips, and stewardship. Safety and stewardship are very important. Some safety tips that are highlighted in the map are never paddle alone, always let someone know when you're planning to get in and off the river, always wear a U.S. Coast Guard approved life vest, and remember that cell phone service is spotty. We're in the process of updating those maps with the next platform location. Once that's complete, the maps will be made available to the public. Thank you for tuning in today to learn about the South Carolina Revolutionary Rivers and the Friends of the Revolutionary Rivers. Please don't hesitate to contact us at forever.us to seek more information, or check us out at visitflow.com, the Florence Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we'll be happy to help you coordinate your trip on the river.